Good morning, friends, and welcome to a continuation of the Friday Talks. Today, we have an interesting subject which I don't think has even been mentioned before. And so we are going to be involved in an interesting hour. The development of Bristol City Docks. Our friend, Geofrey Lane, will be now giving us a talk upon that subject. Geof, whenever you're ready, mate.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you very much for the introduction and welcome. Yes, the topic that I've titled is Development of Bristol City Docks, but it's actually my time in Bristol City Docks rather than the full history of it. And I was the Harbourmaster there from 1991 until 2004. So that's the period of time that really I'd come to talk to you about. I'm not used to giving these kind of talks, so you have to excuse me if I stumble and stutter a bit around things. And really, to start with, although I said I want to go to the history of it, I think a little bit of background before I started would be useful to put things in perspective, really. The Bristol City Docks was, you probably all know, was part of the whole of the docks, which included Avonmouth and Portishead and Bristol, and then later the Portbury dock. And from in the 60s, it was still operating really as a small harbour, but the shipping was a lot smaller and difficult to get into Bristol, and so Bristol City Docks declined quite drastically, and there was a period of time in the 60s that it was clear that it needed some changes to it, and they finally closed all the custom sheds and things in the docks, and really effectively ceased to be a trading harbour. Now, Bristol City Council were the harbour authority, and to get some clarity on that, a harbour authority is a statutory body, and and it has certain rules and bylaws and things of its own, which are sort of outside of the general run of the city council. Although the city council were the sort of the background trustees, if you like, of that harbour. They weren't trustees, but that point. And so this period of time, from the 70s onwards, there was a lot of kind of wondering what's going to happen to the harbour, and lots of ideas coming up. I mean, there was an idea of concreting over certain parts of it, to ease the traffic and things in the city. Which, I mean, in Bristol City now we can see that actually, and people with forethought were thinking, that was going to ease the city. And that caused quite a furore, and the kind of the small group of boaters that were already in the harbour, these were leisure boaters, they got quite upset by this, naturally, and they went to Parliament and got the order, the closing order banned, which, from my point of view, that was a good thing to do, and good to them, because everything we see around the harbour now is really because that they stood up and fought it. At that time, the harbour management, if you like, was under the control of the city engineer, and the docks engineer was a chap called David Neal, who was a bit of a historian as well with his father, and he had sort of very strong views on various things to be maintained, but it was just to keep the function of the harbour going, keep the lock gates going, keep the water management going, and that was it. But behind the scenes, there was a group of council officers that formed a city docks development group, and they were made up of the city valuers. Obviously, there lots of property around the harbour belonged to the council, so there's a great value in there. The city engineers, obviously, they were part of the group because of the management, the ongoing management. The planning departments and their I forget the name of the group, but these are the people that forward plan, as well as the people that look after the planning things that come in on a daily basis. And then, interestingly, culture and leisure section, which included the museums, they came in as well. So they formed this group to get a rounded picture of where to go and how the harbour was going to be developed. It was then, and I say this is before my time, so I'm not saying any of this is totally accurate. It's just a kind of a general picture. But at the time, there was a dockmaster at the Cumberland Basin, and the dockmaster was there, master mariner, to look after the shipping in and out, and that was his position, dockmaster, and he was in attendance, and his team were in attendance every single tide, twice a day. It was then decided that they would introduce the post of Harbourmaster in the city docks itself, and that's the title, and the title is there purely to kind of be able to legally manage the harbour, but the working title was operations manager, and that was the role that I came into a bit later on. And I have to say, quite a lot of work was begun in that period of time. There were things that, the SS Great Britain came in, the Powerboat Grand Prix was going on. They'd set up a sailing school at the Baltic Wharf. The Cabot Cruising Club in Bathurst Basin, they had all their boats moored up on pontoons, as did the Bristol Cruising Club in Welshback. And that was sort of, all going on in the background, but the general state of the harbour was terrible. I mean, there were crumbling buildings, the road, the paths, everything was really falling apart. There was no real income going into the harbour to maintain it. And I guess, as always, the council were very, very short of money to do anything. And they were really looking for people to come in and develop, put proposals to them and put it through the planning system. And that's when this group came into being, came into use, because they would view all these different projects and things and see how that would work. And they did form a strategy, various strategies. So there was a strategy for developing the quaysides and all the area around it and the dock buildings. And there was also a strategy for managing the boats that were in the harbour. And it was at that time that I first started to work at the harbour office in a very sort of beginner position. I was called a site assistant. And I'd come from a yachting background, and I'd been working professionally on the south coast with yacht flotillas and sailing schools and things all on the south coast. And so I had a kind of a picture of the facilities and the things that water sport people and yachty people needed in the harbour. So I was quite keen when I got there and saw the potential to try and get things going, but just a new beginning assistant, not much influence on that. And later a position came up as a duty officer, which was a step up, and I applied for that and got that. got that and carried on as duty officer, which gave him more kind of sway and things and influence in the then harbourmaster, who was a chap called Commander Coles, who later moved down to Avonmouth. And then we had another harbourmaster who came from Gosport, and he was a merchant shipping chap, and he was actually come from a ferry background. And he started, and so I kind of knew a bit about the harbour and things, and so as a help to him. And they created a post called senior duty officer, which I applied for and got, so it was quite a rapid rise up through the ranks. And then unfortunately, Roger, his name was Roger Kaiser, and unfortunately his wife passed away quite suddenly. He had no relations in Bristol, and he was clearly upset and things at the time. Decided that he couldn't stay in Bristol, and was and left to go back, which left a void. And the boss, if you like, the council boss of the section that the harbour fell into, he came to me and said that we'd been watching what I'd done. He'd seen me at a few meetings, and would I be prepared to act up until they could appoint another harbourmaster? And that really was the intention of getting a master mariner into the position. And I can remember when I first started acting up, I was approached by all sorts of people telling me my responsibilities and what I should and shouldn't do and things. So it was quite daunting when I first got there, but I very soon got into this. It was really just a holding position. I was told not to get used to the pay packet, which was quite a useful thing to say. And so that's when I started in there. So that's the kind of the background leading up to it. Now, as it was a short-term post, and I thought, wow, I can do something here. And a lot of the things that it was a struggle to get on the work program to do, I was able to change things around and do it. So that was really quite fulfilling. But one of the very first things that struck me about the harbour was that the number of small boats that were moored against the high walls of the harbour, and the number of ladders on shaky bits of rope and things hanging over the side, and people risking life and limb every time they wanted to get on and off their boat. And as I say, coming from the south coast, well, that was just that would never be allowed. I found out later actually that any kind of accident from that, the council could have found themselves in grave trouble, because it's a dereliction of the duty of the harbour to give unsafe berths to boat owners. So that was my first thing. No money. What we did have were some old pontoons that were used for what was then called the harbour regatta once a year, and they were stuffed away in a little dirty corner of the harbour for the rest of the year. And some big oil booms that were left over from the old commercial harbour days, and they had been used to make the start line for the powerboat Grand Prix. And I thought, well, that's just a waste of time, these things. There's people that could desperately use these things, and there were some inbuilt ladders into the harbour wall. So we set about putting these things against these ladders, which fixed solid ladders, and onto a floating pontoon, just to ease that situation. And they became very, very popular. People just all wanted to get on them, and it started to make the St. Augustine's Reach look quite pretty. All the boats all lined up in a row, and lots of them. Prior to that, it was a kind of a bit of a mishmash of mixture of boats and narrow boats and all sorts of things there that got there. So that was the first kind of demonstration that, if you like, to my bosses, that things could be better. And then luckily, the council embarked upon a program called Invest to Save, and it was a 3-year program where you had to put forward ideas and demonstrate how that money would save money over that period of time, and perhaps even increase revenue for those that were, revenue collecting departments. So I put forward a plan to have various marina type structures put into the harbour. And there was some cynicism among, actually, interestingly, some of the commercial operators and things in the harbour, and talking about restricting widths and affecting navigation, which didn't really stack up with the type of vessels that we were dealing with at the time. And the council said, yes, go ahead. And I can't remember the figure. It wasn't a massive sum. I think it was about £30,000 or something at the time. But this is going back, in the early 90s. So it's a fair sum. And the first pontoon system that we put in was at the Grove, near the Mud Dock. I don't know if you know parts of the harbour, but there's a big pontoon system there. And that was put in, and people were a bit cynical, saying, well, this is going to cost us a lot of money. But we managed to hold the price down, and just to keep it as a standard. I think there was a slight premium on the license fee, but very little. And slowly people started to come onto the pontoon, and we attracted people from Portishead and even on the south coast came and started taking up berths. Some of the people moved off of the club berths, and then the club filled the berth that they vacated. But within 18 months, we'd seen the money back amply in new berthing fees. And so it was a great success. I had 18 months left, and we're going to potentially double that income. So it was a good idea. And my immediate boss in the council, he was the leisure services manager. He was thrilled, because obviously it was a tick in his box as well, and feather in his cap as well. So we then said, okay, well, let's have a look at some other places. And the pontoons that we had in the makeshift ones that we had in the St. Augustine's Reach was the next ones to replace. And so if you look in St. Augustine's Reach at the far end, you'll see a set of pontoons there with a security gate, and that was the pontoon that went in there. And exactly the same situation. It was fully booked, and and bringing in a good income. It's it moved on from there. The scheme finished, so the Investor Save scheme finished, but the principle had been established that this is the way that we could generate the necessary money for the harbour. And the thing is, with the harbour, it's ring-fenced income. So although there were lots of people thinking that they could, this is good for the council coffers, in actual fact, it was ring-fenced and by law, really, because the harbour has to generate sufficient income to maintain a safe harbour for vessels. So until we were making that money, we were coming out of the public purse, which again could be a question point. No going into any council policies and things, but up until that point, really, the main income was still coming in from the sand berths in Pools Wharf. the sand dredgers were still landing sand there, and also Wessex Water had a disposal boat that collected sewage from Sharhampton and took it out to the channel and disposed of it. And then when it wasn't doing its job, it was laid up at Cannon's Marsh. So that was an income there from the commercial rates, and that was really subsidising the whole harbour. The fees from the small boats, before this pontoon thing was making a contribution, but really not a great deal. And bearing in mind that the dockmaster's office doing 2 tides a day, 7 days a week, with unsociable shifts, the income from that was the expenditure for the wages was quite substantial, and then added the other, the operations manager, interior harbourmaster's post, that was an added costs as well. So this money coming in from the small boats was, increasing, and the pricing structures and things obviously went up. So you can look back and think, well, the people that were in the small boats to begin with, a bit cynical, well, perhaps they were right to, but life really was a reality. Things have to be paid for and not subsidized. So that's how it went on. Then we had, and that was happening, but again, the actual councillors at the time, because it was committee based at the time, the councillors on the committee, they were kind of appreciative, and but it really wasn't. They didn't feel that it was totally understood or appreciated, if you like, by the councillors. That's just a personal view, but in amongst all of this, prior to me in that role, this role of City Docks Management Group, system. Sorry, lost my thread. I'll come back to that. So licensing. Yes, they created these strategies, and one of the strategies was the mooring strategy, and the reason for the mooring strategy, because there are so many different ideas and things being put forward for boats in the harbour. There were people wanting restaurant boats. There were already people. There were restaurant boats. I think there was Lockheed and the Lightship, and things had already been brought in, and the Thekla, which was brought in as a travelling theatre boat at the time, I think. So there are lots of things there, and then it was still established. Well, who takes the money? Who regulates them, and how does that work out? So, and also a growing number of people that were bringing their boats in and living on them. Some people were buying boats, putting them in, and letting them to students. So there's a lot of people kind of seeing the commercial opportunities of having this stretch of water. And sorry, I got a little note coming up. Is that? Oh, sorry. Right. Okay. It's not nothing to do with me. So the other, so the thing was to then look at how do we allocate specific berths under a license to occupy them as residential premises, because obviously you're coming into Town and Country Planning Acts and things like that as soon as you start inviting people in to live on their boats. But there were lots of just people, coming in and living on their boats and not letting us know. So there was a lot of confusion, and that needed bringing together. So that occupied quite a lot of my time trying to set up systems and working with the other people in the group to set up licensing arrangements with those people. And time is sort of moving on. So and nobody's approached me and said, actually, you know, we're interviewing for Harbourmasters. I'm still stuck in this position of putting on my face paint every day and acting the position. But I was really kind of so involved in it. It wasn't even, I didn't even think about it, to be honest. But then we had things like we were approached by an organization wanted to organize the Festival of the Sea in 1996. That was the idea was to build a replica of John Cabot's ship and focus everybody's attention on the harbour by having a massive harbour festival. So you can imagine the logistics of that was actually quite tremendous, really. And I was part of a team with the festival people. It was passed, it was agreed, and I became part of a festival team with some other officers, council officers, event officers, to make sure that that was going to be a big success, which it was, and it really highlighted the city docks. Much of it still actually, derelict. A lot of the places were derelict, but we seem to put up a good show around it anyway. And I said that was a great success, and then we tried another option that at this time I thought, well, actually the council should become members of the marine trade group, leisure trade group. So that was a British Marine Federation, British Marine Industries Federation, and Associated Yacht Harbours Association. So really creating much more of a leisure harbour and trying to get away from the old dirty industrial type harbour to really bring it into shape. So we did that, and lots of things were coming, so we get the journals coming through, and then I noticed this thing saying about the Clipper Around the World race, and they wanted to organize cities, so each city to have a boat to bring city, so sort of highlight cities, get some pride into this round the world yacht race. And again, I approached my leisure manager and said, look, this is something that could be really good for the city. It really gets us on the map. And so we went down, and we've had talks and put in a bid, and we got accepted. And so Bristol was one of the first city boats to join this round the yacht race, and we won. So again, another great success, fabulous, and it brought attention to the harbour, and not unnoticed by the British Marine Federation, and particularly the Yacht Harbours Association. So I got talking with them, and they were thinking of a scheme to, if you like, like a rating on yacht harbours as opposed to marinas, the separate thing. So they had a marina award, but they were thinking, well, it's not quite the same thing. Yacht harbour it's not. Perhaps they should have a different award, and so they got that in motion, and we started getting all our bits and pieces up to standard, the toilet facilities, pump out facilities, electricity, water, all the things that people need, showers and things when they come to the city. We started getting that in place. And again, this is due to the fact our income was going up and up and up. So it was my leisure services manager was very, very good at finding bits of money in the council, so he looked to me to come up with ideas, and he went around and found the money, so that we were quite a good team at the time for getting that going. A chap called Richard Smith. Anyway, we then thought, okay, well, we'll get these judges round to judge us, and they came round, and we got a gold star, so another little tick. So we were really on a roll, and it was really very, very good. And in the meantime, in the background, the strategy for the quaysides, that was reaping rewards as well, because again, I'm not clear on it, but I think it was the cathedral and the cathedral school, the gas board and the city council owned between them the whole swathe of land at Cannon's Marsh, and they managed to form a kind of a coalition or something to develop it. And so a lot of the old buildings were knocked down, and the site divided up. At that time, I think it was only the Lloyd's building that was the first sort of structure on the front of the harbour. And part of our role was really to try to keep that, manage that well, so it showed the developers and things that these things could be managed and kept looking smart, and give them some reassurance in their investment. And well, I mean, so much went on. But again, another little source of income is what they call a 106 agreement. And a 106 agreement is a part of the planning process, where if somebody proposes a big development, the local authority can negotiate a sum of money to put towards community use and community improvement. And we managed to get that ring fenced, because if it was around the harbour, when we managed to get that income ring fenced. Interesting times on that is that the boundaries of the harbour started to get kind of lost. In my early days, I had some of the older officers of the council, from engineers and valuers and things, that had historical knowledge of various services and things that were coming into the harbour, and so we could utilise that for lots of other things, but also the boundaries. And the boundaries of the harbour, because lots of it were open, and you can commit a bylaw on one side, a fence on one side of the barrier, and a yard the other side, and it's not the fence. So it's quite an interesting exercise, and so we had to keep account of the boundary, and the boundary is marked by cast iron posts with chains joining them, and some of those chains have got lost, but the posts still mark the boundary. And there's still some of them around. You can still see some of them around. I think some on the Hot Wells Road, Welsh Back, and a few other places. Those are around, but those were the bylaw. Those were the bylaws were made to encompass in that area. Much to do about leaving goods on the quayside, and loitering, and all sorts of funny things in there about what you couldn't do. Well, obviously, you don't want to tell people they can't loiter around the harbour. You want them to loiter around the harbour and visit all the different sites. And not much thought being put towards the bylaws, and so I had to sit down, and bearing in mind my background, absolutely no build knowledge of any of that kind of stuff. I was put in a position where I had to really kind of study the Harbour Docks, Piers and Clauses Act, and the Bristol Harbour Acts, and the Corporation Acts, and all sorts of things that affected the harbour. So that was an awful lot of homework for me, to sit down with a chap called Adrian Phillips, who was the council solicitor allocated to help it. And frankly, we dug through all sorts of things around all sorts of different things in the Act, and we either had to repeal them, keep them, or form another Act or something that superseded them. So that was quite a big exercise, and uh, I mean, it stretched my intellect to the limit, basically. Um, and so that was that. But the sad thing for me really is the thing that kind of uh, it was also positive, and of course things don't go on forever, do they? But because the harbour quayside was being developed, and my leisure manager then became the City Docks estate manager. They created another post called City Docks estate manager, and so he then sort of was not just overseeing the Harbourmaster area of work, but also the quayside management, and I got dragged into that, which is not something I really wanted to do, and but we devised a scheme where my patrol officers would go around and obviously go around the quaysides, but also looking at the boats, and had a kind of a jot thing to jot down anything she needed doing. And it came up time and time again about the cobblestones around the harbour, Welshback, and uh, Redcliffe Wharf, and St Augustine's Reach. Lots of places there that have got cobblestones. And obviously we're now kind of thinking about how are people going to get around the harbour, and work that needed to be done so that it was safe for people to get around. And those cobblestones replacement costs an awful lot of money. And unknown to me, seeing that project through was put against my name. So it was part of the whole city plan. And the councillors looked at it periodically and wanted to know progress on everything. And because of the Festival of Sea, lots of councillors suddenly realised that they had this marvellous asset in the middle of their city, whereas previously they kind of knew it was there, but not really taking much notice. But suddenly it becomes go and visit it and see what a wonderful place it was. So there was a lot of input from councillors, and then it started a lot of criticism of officers and people that were managing the estate and how it's being managed and things. And one project was the Arnolfini, and the Arnolfini was revamped. Part of the revamping was that they had that the builders had the compound which was all of the cobblestones around the corner, and so I had to have meetings with them to arrange things, and we arranged that, and said, well, that all this plant and stuff was going to damage the cobblestones further, and at the end of the project, they must reinstate it and get it flat. So that was like one way of the council getting a benefit, as from the development. Towards the end of it, there were lots of splutterings about the cost, and why was it this Harbourmaster was demanding that all the cobblestones be put right and things, and how much this is going to cost people. As I say, my name was on the document, and so I was the one with the finger pointing at me, which was part of an indication to move on. Also, there was an amalgamation of the dockmaster and the harbourmaster roles. They created one role and created a new system of operating the docks, which was really just electric push buttons rather than physically moving dock gates and things. So all that got modernized, and it was decided that they would amalgamate the two roles, and clearly they wanted a master mariner at the front to lead things forward. So that came to the end of my period in the harbour, but it was really a really exciting time. I was really proud that I could have some input into my hometown's harbour, and I can look around the harbour, now and think, yeah, okay, I didn't do a bad job. There we go. So I'm sorry if it rambled on a bit, but if you've got any questions or any questions, I'd be pleased to hear them.
Well, thank you, Geoff. That was instructive and interesting at the same time, which takes a lot to do. So I appreciate that. And so we've now got time for questions. David.
I'd sort of like to jump in. Geoffrey, that's absolutely fabulous. I came to Bristol probably a little bit after the end of your period, in about 2007. And I came because of environmental interests, but I rapidly became and have remained basically a harbour dweller. I sort of, I would come down to the harbour every day and usually walk from the Arnolfini round down to the right round the harbour, and I just loved it. It was wonderful to be in such a city. I was surprised after one weekend I sort of went down to the harbour and there was like a festival, right? It was fantastic. And then the next weekend I went down to the harbour and there was like another festival going on, and it became kind of relentless. And somebody commented, I was talking to somebody about it, and they said, "Oh yeah, well, we've got events organizer. What they really want is June, July, and August with 8 weekends in each month." Um, and it's been wonderful to see what the city has done to keep the harbour in play, and a cultural festival place rather than a working port. But it's lovely to see. And in the last year, I wanted to get kind of closer to it. I've got a niece who's living on a Dutch pusher barge down by in the yacht sales marina.
Oh yeah.
And I found first of all that I was old and that there were courses for old people. And I went on a rowing course from All Aboard Watersports and a boat building course that they were running. So since last April, I've been with a group that put together a little skiff, three-man skiff that is now part of All Aboard Watersports.
Absolutely.
And I think it's wonderful to have such a sort of cultural feature for the city. And I just really appreciate all the things that happened. And, and it's not all good, of course. Sometimes there are things that are irritating or annoying. But yeah, great. Thank you so much. So that's a kind of comment. To turn it into a question, I know. So, well, I mean, I've got bigger ones about the future, which is that I'm very concerned about environmental stuff, and I can actually see that we've inevitably going to get sea level rise. But the good end of that is if the sea level rises a lot, we will probably end up building a barrage across the Severn, which would mean that you could convert all the new cut into recreational area as well. So what's been done on one side of Spike Island could be replicated along the other side. And I wonder if you've got any thoughts about that. But first of all, thank you very much for wonderful talk.
Well, that's great, and I mean, great coincidences there, because in my spare time, I was very keen in sailing and youth groups and things in the harbour, particularly at the Baltic Wharf end. And I volunteered to be the principal of West of England Schools Sailing Association, and we developed that into an ROAA centre, and then it was staffed by volunteer teachers. and they formed it way back in the 70s, the Avon School Sailing Association, because they were funded by Avon. Anyway, funding and things went through, but they started to retire, and so it was starting to get difficult to to keep things going. And we had a meeting decided to turn it into all water sports for all people, not just youth.
Yeah.
And it became all aboard water sports,
Great.
and so I was one of the first trustees of all aboard water sports. So that's a great great thing there. With regards to the flooding and the barrier, actually in the, I'm trying to think when it was probably in the 90s, maybe in the 2000, I think it's in the 90s. The Bristol Development Corporation was formed, and one of the ideas was to put a weir across the new cut and to impound the water up the river to make an entrance into the harbour instead of the new cut through the Bathurst Basin, and also create a canoe slalom thing that they had elsewhere in I forget how correctly, where was it? Sorry, age, but we went to Nottingham. I think we went to visit this this water sports centre and this canoe slalom, and that was all kind of, oh yeah, you know, and an act of Parliament was not. Yes, I think it was one. They've changed it. You can get a Harbour revision order, but I think at the time you had to change the Act, the Docks Act, to get permission to do it. And that was all going through, but then the Development Corporation were, ceased to be, and that all fell into disarray. But the idea of a barrier there, a flood barrier, we've got the gorge, which is a pretty kind of solid both sides. It's you're not going to let any water through, so I mean it does present a good opportunity, and as a good method of protecting the city from sea rises. So who knows? Watch your space.
Yeah. Great.
Right. Any other questions?
All around near the Arnafini and places like that is the development of nearly the cargo shed type of idea.
Yeah.
Do you think that should be developed, or do you have any other kind of futuristic ideas which you think would be good for the harbour?
You mean the goods sheds on the Augustine's Reach? That area? Well, I mean, they've already been converted into various, mostly leisure, and the night economy, as they call it. And those buildings, I think, are protected, so I don't think anything could be done to kind of change the exterior. I think.
No, I was thinking more of it. The big cargo shed types of things.
Oh, well, big containers.
That's the fellas.
Containers, yes. Well, I know there are containers. There's like a little container area up at Templebacks, and where they've got some cafes and things. Containers. I'm not sure that. I say sometimes. So I think on the Wapping Wharf side there may be some opportunity there, and it's a very useful. These are useful things because I understand that a lot of them are what they call one-trip containers. So they're sort of loaded up in China or wherever and brought to Britain, and the cost of the container is far, it's a minuscule sum for the amount of cargo in them. But that said, I'm in Weston-super-Mare now, and I don't seem to learn, but I got pulled into setting up a gig club in pilot gig club in Weston-super-Mare. And we've been trying to find a base, you know, and trying to somewhere to keep our wooden boat. I mean, we've been very, very lucky. We've raised a lot of cash in a very short space of time, and so we, you know, we managed to buy our own 2 boats in the first year of setting up, which is, you know, incredible. But we need a boathouse, and I've been badgering the council executive member for leisure and things in Weston, probably using my kind of knowledge of how things work from Bristol, and we've managed to get a container put on the beach lawns in the newly formed Sea Monster Garden. So we had a Sea Monster exhibition in Weston, and they left behind lots of plants and bits and pieces and left over for the community, and part of that was some containers. So they put a container there for us on the condition that we've clad it with wood, so it doesn't look like a container. So I think there's a place for them, certainly for you know, if even if it's sort of just pop-up things. But I mean, just my mind thinks this way, but I was thinking, well, after the war, it was a terrible state, you know, lots of dereliction and housing shortage, and we built asbestos prefabricated buildings.
Refurbs, yeah.
And so it struck me, I thought, well, if all this is happening and we've got a major housing problem, you know, surely it doesn't take much to think about how that can be converted. I understand in parts of Bristol, I think it's Bedminster Way somewhere, that they've actually created like a little village of these containers converted specifically for people that are homeless.
Yeah.
So as far as containers are concerned, I think they got a use. Whether planners would like them in the Bristol Harbour area, I mean, that's to be seen.
On that, I was at a Bristol Civic Society meeting where the developers who did the Wapping Wharf development presented, you know, how and why they'd done what they'd done, and how they put in these containers between the housing they've put in and the harbour, and what the next stage of the development was going to be. And they liked the idea of a community of little shops and things, but there's going to be something more permanent in place, but reminiscent of what they call cargo at the moment. So yeah, the ideas then, I think you're right. I love the idea of us saying homelessness is just not on, and you can buy what is in effect cheap housing units that have been used for containers, and put something up as a meanwhile use somewhere. You know, you're not allowed to build housing unless it's going to last 100 years, but there are parts of Bristol which are potentially prone to flooding, where you could say, well, let's just put container villages in. And there's one going up further down the river, Sea Mills, I think. A tiny house community is going up in a field by the riverside there. So, you know, meanwhile uses of buildings that can actually be moved out if flooding gets too bad or whatever.
Yeah.
Let's use these old resources, but in a sensitive way that makes it, you know, fun for people to see what's going on. I love the community around the Harborside, and it's been a real pleasure getting a little bit closer to it through, you know, getting involved in rowing and boat building.
Has anybody else any questions? Mary, you're muted, Mary.
Sorry, Geof, that was a wonderful talk, and I just wanted to praise you for the All Afloat, because my late disabled daughter-in-law got tremendous pleasure from sailing in a dinghy. I believe that was your brainchild, was it?
Well, it was a brainchild of a group of us that were previously the West of England Schools Sailing Association, and we were just wondering what was the future, because no local authority funding, so keep things going. Although, you know, the premises themselves were local authority. But the interesting thing was the council wanted to sell off the sailing school at the time. I was given the task of trying to find a commercial operator to run it, which it wasn't going to work. It's not really a commercial venture. It's in the wrong place. So, I mean, this was the feedback from the people I approached. And I said to the schoolmasters that premises on Baltic Wharf, why don't you take it on and we can run with voluntary instructors, we can run courses, public courses, and those public courses can fund the other things like the sailability and the school groups and lots of needy groups that we wanted to encourage, and they were all for it. So they decided to join in and approach the council, and obviously the position I was in, I had kind of an in route for them, and persuaded the council that they were a good organisation to run it, and it moved on from there. But it changed from West of England Schools Sailing Association, which came from Avon Schools Sailing Association, into All Aboard. That was in 2012, when we were the first charitable incorporated organization, because that was a new form of charity that came out at the time. So it all fell into place, and I'm pleased to see it going out. In fact, I'm still talking to them about the gig rowing in Weston. So
good.
Everything connects, But the sailability was an excellent thing there.
Yeah.
And some lovely memories of people on that sailability stuff.
Lovely.
I have a slightly tongue-in-cheek question here, which I will now put forward. Can you see yourself in the next few years as an advisor, say, to exciting developments in Weston-super-Mare?
I'd certainly like to be part of an organisation that was doing that. Yeah. I mean, I'm 75, so I've got to be realistic. It's you can only do so much. But this Weston-super-Mare Pilot Gig Club has been an absolute godsend to me, because previously I'd lost my wife, and I was really just ready to sit in a chair and pass away. So when this came up, I've been milling over things and thinking, oh, crikey, all the things that I'm sure people have gone through it, know the problem. And I came to a decision that I was going to say yes to everything. Anybody approached me, I say yes, I'll do it. And so it's actually Pat's son that approached me from the yacht club in Weston and said, they wanted to do this. And I thought, oh, I've forgotten it all. I don't know. I can't think of any, I can't remember anything about all this stuff. It's all in the past. And I said, yes, I would. And that decision was amazing, because it brought me out. It regenerated my brain. It brought back all the kind of things that I was doing every day of the week as a job. And really, I think I think I wouldn't be here now, to be honest. I think there's every chance I wouldn't be here now had I not gone into that. So I do reluctantly say no. Or I don't want to say no to things, but at the same time I have to be realistic, and one thing the rowing club has taught me is that young people, they're so dynamic and things, and the speed in which they operate is amazing. That I get, I can't work at that end of the thing. I can work much more, as you say, perhaps in an advisor, just called in or something. Yes, I could probably do that if I can be useful. That would be that would be very good. But I'm very, very supportive of all these things, and I've always been supportive of getting young people involved. I mean, I was a scout when I was a youngster. I didn't do much in the way of sailing and things, but I was a scout, which gave me a little bit of kind of, get up and go out and do things. I got into, sorry, I'm waffling, but I got into yachting by accident, really. I was catering in North Wales in a leadership training centre for executives, and looking after their welfare while they were staying there. But they used to go out in the mountains and lakes and things and do all sorts of activities as part of projects and leadership projects. And I used to go out there on my days off. And I said to one of the qualified people, I said, how the hell did you get such a wonderful job? And they said, well, I started off as a sailing instructor in Poole. And I said, well, give me their number. And so I phoned them up, and they said, yeah, well, we're starting our season in March. You can come down and join us. We don't pay you very much, but we can give you somewhere to live. And I thought, yeah, have a go for it. But from that, I realized that as a child, I knew nothing about all that life, all that kind of, that there's an industry there, and I knew nothing about it. And I thought, I'm going to go back and make sure every young person, from my sort of background, knows about these things. And that's it. Sorry, yeah, I can waffle.
No, waffle on, my friend. That is good. Yeah, you'd be surprised at sort of people we have coming to this, which are found. I'm going to make someone slightly embarrassed, which are found by the amazing Patsy Selden, who finds us wonderful people nearly every week. Yeah. And I admire her initiative.
I must say that this week, as on several other weeks, the real initiator who told me about Geof was Mary Bailey, who gives me loads of good ideas, and that is really helpful.
Sorry, yes, of course. Sorry, I'm mixing the two of you up. Of course, yeah. Sorry. I'm getting emails from you, Patsy, but I've been talking to Heather, so I confused the two of you. I'm very sorry. Yes.
Oh, don't worry. Yeah. Don't worry.
Yeah. Well, anyway, thank you very much. That's all very kind
words.
Thank you. I'm very pleased.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much again, Geof, for your isn't it very interesting talk.
Okay.
Next week we have something very different. Among Us is a title that Alison Mather is the director of Quaker Action on Alcohol and Drugs. Very different. Well, thank you, friends, for attending. And as I say often, tell everybody you're meeting, all your friends, tell the cat to come next week and be with us. So for now, fairly well, and have a pleasant weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Geof, thank you very much. That's great.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.